searching for answers.
Here are today's top stories.
It's been over 24 hours.
And the local news.
What we see are a lot of things that are going on the earth.
This is Art of Heaven News Talk.
Art of Heaven News Talk time. Broadcasting live from WHPC Studios in Garden City, New York. This is Art of Heaven News Talk. I'm your host, Johnny Brummett. And with me today is my co-host, Mark Russick of the Russick Outlook YouTube channel and podcast, Christina Orlando, media personality, and local pastoral intern, Dan Bartucci. Woo. If you want to join the conversation, and I encourage you to join the conversation today, you can call me at 516-572-7440. It's 516-572-7440. So, we got a whole lot of news with a whole lot of tension going on in America today. I just want to start off by just sharing my thoughts about this real quick. Okay, we all have seen it in the news. The protests. We got pro-Palestinian / anti-Israel protesters all across college campuses, across the country, everywhere, right? Now, it's kind of in the words, right? We can't just put a stereotype on all the protesters. We have some that are authentic pro-Palestinian protesters. Yes, they have a heart for the people in Gaza. But I don't really think that that's all of them. I think there are some that are labeled anti-Israel. They just hate Israel out there. Then there's some people that are just joining the chaos maybe. Then there's a lot of Americans out here that just don't care. They don't give a whoop. Right? They got life going on. There's people in my personal life that are in brain surgery removing tumors right now. There's people in doctor's offices with loved ones. So let's look at the broad picture here. Okay, the facts are there is two sides that are absolutely stuck in their stances. They're not budging, right? There's people, whether it's the Trump versus the liberals or the Israel versus Palestinians. This is just the state of America right now. And how can we approach this to use the rule, the good old rule from 7 Habits? Seek first to understand, then to be understood. What are these protesters wanting? And are they going about it the right way? I don't really know.
Yeah. As Christians, we are called to have compassion for other people, especially people that we might not understand or have different views than us. So I look at a lot of these protesters and I have compassion because they're clearly in pain. They're suffering because of what they see in the world. We have a fallen world and all of these atrocities are happening. And I remember being in college, I felt like so powerless over all of the things that were happening. And even for me, I felt somewhat the world was rigged against me succeeding. There's a lot of things that happen. And not to mention social media right now. The algorithms, I read a Washington Post article a few years ago that said that the posts that have the most anger emoji reactions get put on the news feeds the quickest. So we're being wired to look at these things that incite division, incite anger. And so I can't have a question of course, these students are angry at what is the input that they're getting?
Like, look at Colombia, all right? This is where it started, right?
Yeah.
There's been a history of protests and takeovers of Hamilton Hall before. But when I look at them, I just kind of see like whining babies almost, right? Some of them are, really passionate about the atrocities that are happening.
Yeah.
But who's doing that for Sudan?
What is it doing?
Isn't there genocide?
What is the direct impact that they're having? That's my question.
Is it working?
Is it working?
Yeah, I think for now the direct impact is just generating more noise, more social media posts. I think what's different, I think, Johnny, you were kind of hitting on it, right? Yeah, there's a deep history in the United States of protests at college. And some of this, predates me, but as a student of history, going back to Kent State, going back to Jackson State, right, where it was either issues of civil rights or even, again, a united protest against a Vietnam War, against a war that they didn't believe in. Again, kids united at this school, not wanting to be drafted into the military. It's a far cry from what is, I think, in a lot of campuses, noise, attention. You said pro-Israel, pro-Palestine. There's pro-Hamas people in here. There's professional protesters showing up at campuses. I think
Right.
it's about 30% of the arrests are people in their mid-40s, early 50s that are just there to protest. So I think, Christina, to your point, when you have a cause, there's freedom of speech. Like, as a Christian, we're on the side of peace.
Amen.
But
Amen.
there's just a lot that are not, right ideals lined up here.
So in terms of what you both said, using the internet, using social media, and, drawing that analogy of what life used to be, today these impacts are global. So what you see in Colombia is being watched in Tehran, is being watched in Brussels, is being watched in London, and cheered on by a great number of people, because traditionally America was a supporter of Israel and their independence, being the only democratic country. And, obviously we've had a great deal of input into the establishment of the country. But today that's turning rapidly. And this is, when I look at this, and I recognize that there's a lot of students, but there's a lot of organized infiltration. We know that there's a ton of money in organizing these events. Mm-hmm. This is happening in colleges. You can date this back a couple of weeks ago, where they saw all the bridges that were being closed across the country. This is organized. This is a web of dark money, of influential people who want divisiveness, who want division, who want to divide Israel. And unfortunately, a lot of these people, when I listen to some of the interviews for some of the students, they really aren't aware, not all of them, but they're not aware of the history of Israel, of that area of the Middle East, of Palestine, of Gaza. I can go back to Gaza was turned over to the Palestinians in 2005. This is a beautiful strip of land on the Mediterranean coast. It was wonderful. Israel pulled out of there, 10,000 so homes, roughly, I'm saying, and they gave it over, and it was turned into a war zone. So, this is what a lot of people fail to recognize. And, unfortunately, there's people that are caught up in it who don't want it, but there's so much misinformation out there. I hate to use that word because everybody's throwing it around.
What year did that happen when they pulled out of Gaza?
So 2005 it is where the Israelis, and they've traditionally tried to make land for peace exchanges. So in other words, they're saying, we're going to give you this stretch of land roughly 32 miles wide, about 8 to 10 miles deep. And again, beautiful coastal land. This is the Mediterranean. This is beautiful. And they gave it over to them, and I think it was within a year or so, they held votes. They voted in Hamas. Hamas basically wants to remove Israel. When they say from the river to the sea, that's the extermination of the Jews. And that's what they've been fighting for. So when the governments are pushing, hey, we want a two-state solution or this or that, the people who are in authority in that area, and I'm not talking about all the common lay folk, people who were pulling the purse strings and directing things, they want it all. They want Israel removed. They want the Jews removed. And now, flip your paradigm. Put yourself in the feet of a Jewish student or a Jewish mother or a Jewish father, and seeing what's happening. And some of these people saw what happened in World War II, and we see history repeating itself.
Yeah, you're sending future generations into a school where, again, some of these protesters, some of them may not know what they're chanting when they're chanting from the river to the sea, but it is for the extinction of the Israeli people. So you're sending your next generation into these campuses, and they're going to school, or they're being blocked by these violent protests that don't want them alive. Let's not make a mistake. Like, that is what Hamas is for.
Right.
And then some of them treat Israel as this war machine. Let's make no mistake. If Israel wanted to just obliterate the Gaza Strip, they have the technology, the manpower, the means to do it. They have a right to defend themselves. War is awful. There are innocent people on the ground being lost in Gaza. Not going to deny that. But Israel could make this far, far, far worse. And they have, going back to your point, Mark, historically have tried to make this work. I don't think anything's going to work in that area until probably the end times. But it's just, back to what you're saying, Johnny, it's misguided rage and protest on these campuses.
I think what it comes down to is it's just hatred. The two sides really hate each other, and personally...
Whoa. I would disagree. I don't feel like the Jewish people, for the most part, hate the Arabs. They want peace with the Arabs.
Yeah, no, I you know what, you're right. I shouldn't say both sides, but I just know that going back, my personal experience, right? 3 years ago, when I came to New York, my first job, I was on a truck driving as a mechanic. And the guy I was partnered with to go out to work with was Palestinian. And I still remember, that was my first experience with this hatred. I mean, the way he spoke and the way, it was just my personal experience. One time, one day. And I never forgot it. And I was like, yo, I don't even know anything about this. But he was so passionate about telling me how the Israel people are doing them. You know,
and I don't know, your friend, whether he was born there or not, but I'll just put it this way. And this is well documented. You can find the videos, the books and whatnot. Children are taught at a very early age in that area to hate the Jews. They actually will have 5, 6, 7-year-old grammar school plays, and they dress up in armor, and they make a stage production of shooting and killing Jews, and the parents are cheering, and these are kids. So my point is, they're taught from a very early age this mindset. So I don't know whether your friend or not, was raised there, but I think, now we're 25 years later, and we're seeing a lot of that fruit. Well, I wouldn't bad fruit, I would call it.
Yeah. I think it goes to what you're saying, though, Christina, right? It's just, it feeds the machine. Now it feeds the social media machine.
Yeah. And we are a lot of programming as humans, what we are raised believing, what we see around us in the media. So we really need to pray as Christians, especially for what's the truth, what independently of what we're being told externally. We don't want to be pawns in anyone's game.
Right.
We want to know what is the truth, and the truth is found in Christ.
Yeah, and I would say it this way too. Even if it doesn't agree with your situation or with your belief factor, but if it's the truth, at least then you can deal with it and move from there.
Fine, yeah, but you have a choice in this, right? So if at the core, some of the more educated interviews that I've seen in the protests, right, they want Columbia to either change the funding that they support. That's your choice. Then you can protest peacefully, or you don't go to Columbia University.
Right.
You're making a choice to go to a school, and if they're not aligned to your values, the same way we can do as believers, right? I think one of the nice things that it's a Catholic organization, the Knights of Columbus. Like the Knights of Columbus, when you get their when you take their life insurance, they show you all the things that they invest their money into, and you make that choice. Hey, well, these are aligned to my beliefs if you're a practicing Roman Catholic. But you can't go to the school and try to tear it down, try to do all this damage, try to invite all this. You have a choice.
Yeah, everyone needs to believe what I believe.
Columbia is what? It's got to be like 75. It's something ridiculous for a 4-year education.
Yeah.
Don't go.
But you make a great point about the money. Because if you look at these colleges, all your Ivy League colleges, and this is fresh information, top 5 investors outside of international countries, you have Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE, Kuwait, and China. Now, China is clearly not Islamic, but they are trying to get their influence in there. So these are the 5 largest donors. And then, kind of getting back to what I was saying earlier, where these are very well organized, means there's a lot of money behind it. There's a lot of dark money behind it. What we know from I'll call them the globalists, the Soros Foundation and whatnot. And I mean, there's just a web of non-for-profits, terrorist organizations. You see these colleges, they've got $500 North Face tents built up everywhere. Who's supplying that money? It's coming from somewhere.
I didn't see $500 in a year when I went to college, let alone have it
Facts.
for a tent. But yeah, if you're a believer, let's take this back because I think we were mentioning, living life as a believer, then you have to go about and make decisions that are aligned to your core values and beliefs, who you follow in the person of Christ. It can't be in between. It can't be both at the way they're doing it. By the way, Iran came out this week.
Yep.
And they are in full support of what's happening. And if you are pro-Hamas, if you are anti-Israel, they're happy to give you a 4-year scholarship to a college in Tehran. Let me know how that goes. If anybody wants to take that up and see the difference
But
when you're in a country like that.
What does that tell you? So if you're expelled from one of these schools, the world's largest sponsor of terrorism is saying, hey, come on over to here. We like what you're doing.
Yeah. And you can imagine the side courses that you get taught while you're there. I can't imagine what they are, but yeah.
Scary.
Yeah.
You're listening to Art of Having News Talk, and if you want to call us up and share your opinion, the number is 516-572-7440. So the CEO of a hair loss company, Hims, came out tweeting and on X and everything, and that's in the news all over. He's basically getting a bunch of backlash for basically supporting the protesters.
He actually came out and said, "Hey, I'm real proud of what you're doing, and here's my open jobs, and I'm happy to hire you." I think it was tanking the stock price. It's a publicly traded company, Hims. I didn't know that.
Yeah, there's people saying, "Oh, I'm selling the stock off." His tweet was actually his exact tweet said, "If you're currently protesting against the genocide of the Palestinian people and for your university's divestment from Israel, keep going. It's working." He said there are plenty of companies and CEOs eager to hire you, regardless of university discipline. Apply here. And he put a link to his company.
Yeah. If you're a peaceful protester and you're a CEO and you want that, great. Maybe they're good at organization. You're going to be hiring criminals at this point because the activity in the last week is criminal activity that's happening at these campuses.
Yeah. Now, at the end of the day, there's so much news going on out there. As we move on, think about it. Do you think the officers that were killed in North Carolina, the officers' families that were killed in the shooting in North Carolina, in Charlotte, this past week, you think they're caught up in this? I mean, that story right there is a state of our country right now. Some law enforcement are going to execute the warrant, and this guy just unloaded and killed 4 police officers. That's a lot. That's deep, Turn the page in the newspaper, and there's another story. The tornadoes in the Midwest. Biggest this year so far, really took a big toll on that company, that area. There's a lot of lives lost.
Dan, can you share your background in this category?
Field? Yeah, as a briefly fully retired storm chaser in the Midwest, I think the look at what you're seeing, and I know
he's not joking.
No, I'm not.
He was chasing those tornadoes.
What's happened in the investment in technology. So let's take the good side of this. The warnings that are happening in the United States, technology is catching up. Everything from a lamppost to your car is giving accurate data now. So I think even if some of those really big tornadoes that we saw this past week, there was something like 25, 27 minutes of warning time. So fatalities will come down from that. But in the Midwest, we're seeing larger storms. We're seeing them more frequently. We're seeing them earlier. That's something that's not going to change. Probably less down in the news, going back to what we were saying before with the original story. That's not going to trend on social media, right? That's not, you're just going to see what you're programmed to see. And right now it's programming young adults away from some of these stories that they should be paying attention to, and just fueling more random people to show up at Columbia University, or even here. I think this morning, was Hofstra was on the news, or a couple even local campuses getting involved too. But
yeah, we got Stony Brook, we got Adelphi, also joining in this campus protest thing.
What I find fascinating is you can go back 2,500 years, and this was prophesied in the Bible, where nations will start to come against Israel. To maybe somebody, there's a listener out there who questions the validity of Christ in the Scriptures. You can't make this stuff up. I mean, this was prophesied, the birth of the nation of Israel, the rebirth, I should say.
That's one point I do want to stress. We got two sides here. We got the people protesting. do they know that there's a huge spiritual element to this? Do they know that the history?
Yeah.
I mean, the Bible is a historical artifact. You know what I mean? Like, and it says there's a long history between countries in this area.
Yep.
And there's going to be some things to happen, and it looks like it's unfolding.
It's unfolding exactly as the Bible said it would.
Yeah, all roads are going to lead back. Actually, a couple days ago, they did some more archaeological digging, and they found another part of a wall in Jerusalem that they can date back before Hezekiah, one of the kings in Judah, and it lined up to an earthquake, an event that's recorded in the Bible.
Love that.
Is that right?
If we need to find more scientific fact, it's coming. But Johnny, your point, all roads eventually go back to Jerusalem, and I don't know. The sad thing is, Mark, maybe to your point, I don't know if we see peace until those days come.
I don't until Jesus returns.
Now that we're talking about all this like real hard stuff in the news, that rightfully so, it's a little emotional. I feel a little guilty when I got a little ticked off this past week when I heard Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile, and we're sharing our data. Essentially, did you hear about this? Okay.
I wish that I was surprised by this.
The FCC fined Verizon, AT&T, and other major carriers nearly $2 million for sharing customer data. Oh, piss me off.
Yeah, I just feel like no one cares about our data. Like, no matter what app I download at this point, I'm like, they're going to know where I live. They know my dog's name. Like, they're just going to know. But I feel like because it's just so normalized, it's something that's just such a breach and such a danger. Again, Dan is a bit of an expert in this category as well. He could talk more. But I feel like we're so desensitized by this. So it's just like, we hear, oh yeah, data breach, yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, look, you should operate with no assumption that anything you do right now is not. I mentioned the tornado story, right? They're using mobile phone data. So it's out there. Protect yourselves. Be smart. Don't put things. But I think, Christina, your point. It's out there. It's being used for profit in some.
None of us are safe.
It looks like they shared real-time local data, right? And it ended up in the hands of bounty hunters, bail bond companies, amongst other entities.
All the good ones.
Dog the bounty hunters using your AT&T. Yeah, okay. Dog. He paid a pretty penny for that data.
Yeah.
There was something a couple of years ago. They found one of the, and I don't remember the name, but it was an online gambling app in the UK. People just blew through the disclaimer, but the disclaimer actually said, we will rate your odds based on where you are, where we locate you for GPS. So if you're a fan of Arsenal and you were at the Arsenal game, they knew where your phone was. You're at the stadium. They gave you worse odds because they assumed you were drinking with your buds and you were caught up in the stadium.
Oh my gosh.
Or if you were an Arsenal fan and you're in like New Jersey, they gave you less odds because you're like, hey, this person's home and they're just watching the game.
We want to give them hope.
Yeah, read through the terms and conditions. None of us do, but stuff like that's in there.
Crazy. Well, we got a lot of crazy news out there, but there is some good in the world happening.
Absolutely. The Knicks won.
The Knicks won.
Whoa.
Amen. I've been waiting decades for this.
Only because of the Spurs are out of the playoffs, so you guys celebrating those, but go ahead.
No, I'm a long-suffering Knicks fan, so I was delighted. I'm probably setting up the next show coming in, but
But I want to talk about a little event you're attending here, Mark.
Is there any good in the world?
We are seeing some good in the world. So can you share this event and this organization?
sure. It's Long Island Youth for Christ. They're having their annual dinner fundraiser tonight, and I've been supporting this ministry for so long. It's awesome, and you know what they're doing is really engaging with our youth, with the young boys, young men, girls, young women. And they're giving them something positive. They're working with them. They have after-school programs with them. They're in the schools. They're in the county. They work in concert with a lot of the municipalities and the town boards. And I just think it's a shining light on the hill that we should celebrate. They're doing their part in bringing the gospel to Long Island.
Yeah, Youth for Christ is an awesome thing. I've actually went to the banquet the last 2 years, and it's a global enterprise. Like,
Yep.
They have chapters everywhere.
Yep.
They're doing a great thing.
But this is specifically out in Long Island.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for tuning in to Art of Heaven News Talk. Join us here every Friday at 3:30. Joining me today was my co-host, Mark Russick of the Russick Outlook, media personality Christine Orlando, and Dan Bartucci. Thank you, Dan, for being here. You're amazing. And it's awesome you chase
Even though he's a
storms,
Spurs
dude.
fan.
And a Rangers fan. Can I get some love
all
here
right.
today? Okay, good.
New York Rangers.
Yes,
Oh,
yes,
all right.
yes. You gotta
Yes.
get some. Try to
We're
save
giving
it
some
here.
love.
Thanks for having me, John.
The tornado chaser is in the building if you need one. God bless. Next week, holla at us.
All right.